This is Chapter 9 where we go over general deterrence. All right, introduction. We're going to look at deterrence, and when we look at deterrence, we have to look at the deterrent effects of different types of punishment. The definition of deterrence, which is the act of making someone decide not to do something, and the act of preventing a particular act or behavior from happening. If you go back, to this picture, obviously the deterrence in this photo would be and I've seen lots of these done in high schools and stuff of not to drink and drive, and show somebody a car that's been wrecked that's caused from drinking and driving. So by taking a car and having it towed to a high school, for example, would be deterrence and have a deterrent effect, hopefully, of people stopping to drink and drive. All right, so there are two different types of deterrence. There's general deterrence, which is punishing offenders and it's as an example to others. And it's also a sentencing objective, which aims to discourage persons other than the offender from committing the crime. There's also specific deterrence, which focuses on the activity of the offender as an objective of sentencing, which is fit to a particular offender. Both types assume a rational offender. The requirements for deterrence relies on the existence of three factors. One is severity, which is making certain punishments provide enough pain to offset the pleasure of the criminal offense. Is certainty, which means the chances of getting caught and punished. And celerity, which is the swiftness of the response, which shows, and that's where you get the picture of the cheetah. All right, the deterrent effect of legal sanctions. There have been studies on deterrence, and they take a variety of different forms. You have your cross-sectional studies, for example, looking at the death penalty if it has an effect. You have your longitudinal studies, which look for a change as a result of introducing the change, and panel designs, which follow separate units over time. There's also meta-analysis, which study published evaluations. All right, of the cross-sectional analysis, you have, let me get this all up here, it's coming up a little weird. Okay, let's go back. All right, you have studies of certainty, which look at the certainty of an arrest or conviction and their effect on the overall crime. Also, you look at combining severity and certainty. It's statistically significant impact of severity and certainty in the cross-sectional deterrence research. Right here's a link. You can go look up the death penalty, and it was the convicted murderer dares the judge to give him the death penalty. So this was about a 3-minute clip that really goes into some different examples of things. Also, this is kind of a look at just 2 minutes of people were asking people that were walking by on whether or not they think the death penalty is a deterrent to crime, and so this is just another example of what different people think. All right, longitudinal research. So we are looking at the severity of the sanctions. Does it have a deterrent effect of the death penalty since it's received so much attention? Studies looking exclusively at the severity of the sanction failed to find a deterrent impact in the death penalty. It's really interesting in this as well to look at different countries and see what their punishment is, and how much America differs as well in the punishment of different crimes and how we're all different, and it's pretty amazing the different research that's out there. In the death penalty, there's a really popular term called the brutalization effect, which looks at actually how the death penalty increases homicides. Right here, this was the weight of life and death, the unthinkable brutality of the death penalty, and how it causes the brutalization effect. So you can take time to go look at this 2-minute clip. All right, going on to longitudinal research, the certainty of apprehension. So it's basically altering the law with mandatory punishments and increasing arrests or police crackdowns. There were panel studies done that support the deterrent effect of the death penalty. However, several methodological concerns call the conclusions into question. All right, and then going on to meta-analysis, Pratt claimed that deterrent measures only have a modest impact, and Yang and Lester found conflicting evidence. So you can go look at these evaluations more in depth in your textbook if you'd like. All right, in the Yang and Lester study, they found that there were 41 time series studies revealed 28 with a deterrent effect and 12 with a brutalization effect. So that was looking at the death penalty. And the panel studies show similar results with a statistically significant deterrent impact. The cross-sectional single execution and plebiscite studies provide no conclusive results. All right, perceptions and deterrence. The ability to deter offenders rests upon the assumptions about the knowledge held by potential violators regarding the law and the criminal justice system, which makes sense when you think about it, because deterrence assumes that the offender considers the consequences and possible actions of their choices, and they make rational choices because of that. Offenders are often unaware of the legal codes and changes in law. I mean, they're hard enough sometimes for me to follow. So a lot of times people don't follow them, and they can be unique and different depending on the location as far as the state or the jurisdiction where the criminal does the crime. Also, statutes only give information about possible sanctions, as we all know. It doesn't really go into, okay, this is what's going to happen, or show you what happens, what really happens to people if they engage in or do a certain crime. All right, perceptions and deterrence. So, perceived certainty. There is conflicting evidence that the increased perception of risk is related to reduced deviant behavior. Researchers question whether the perception of apprehension deters crime or whether the actual apprehension of an individual raises the perception of risk, which is what we call the experiential effect. All right, such as I did it last week and I didn't get caught, or I can tell you that I know I stopped people for possibly speeding, and I would make a pretty good guess that if I stopped them, that probably wasn't the first time they were speeding, so on and so forth. Past behavior has a larger effect on subsequent perceptions than perceptions have on behavior. All right, continuing on perceptions and deterrence. So perceived severity is relatively little research on this, on what people think, oh, this might happen and this might be what happens to me if I do this crime, so this is why I did it or didn't do it. Severity holds minimal influence compared to the contribution of social background characteristics and social support factors. All right, combined deterrence factors. So there is a certainty of apprehension. It does appear to hold the most potential for improving the possibility of deterrence. So if people know that they are going to get caught for doing something, then that is going to have a more deterrent effect than anything. The severity and the celerity tend to hold little or no impact in deterring behavior. So very interesting there. Experience plays a larger role in determining perceptions than perceptions have on future behavior. So that's a tongue twister, but very true. And perceptions do seem to have some deterrent impact for individuals. All right, in summary, there is no strong, compelling arguments that the law and sanctions have any major impact on the level of offending. Increased certainty of apprehension and punishment results in reduced offending, and severity has little influence on behavior, as well as the sanctioning power of the criminal justice system alone is not enough to keep motivated individuals from offending. So if somebody needs money to utilize drugs, to pay bills, to do whatever they need to do, that is the most motivating factor. All right. There we go. That ends chapter 9.